Good morning. Good morning. So, I took last week off for my live stream, my weekly live stream, because I did a pop up class, which was really cool. I'm probably going to do that again because it turned out it was a really nice way of interacting. So, last week, if you missed the live stream, it's because I did the pop up class. This week, I am getting back to my weekly live streams. And today I want to talk about essentially overall about the assessment process and developing core competency in play therapy using the assessment process based on five really important clinical skills that you need to be a competent play therapist. And so part of that involves diagnosis. And I know, having had conversations with people in my profession over the last 30 years as a child and adolescent therapist, that diagnosis often has a negative connotation around it. And I understand that. At the same time, I think that if we kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, so to speak, then we're kind of short circuiting the process. Diagnosis is a tool. It's not the end all be all, and it is a tool that's important to use when we're working with children and adolescents. Okay, so just an FYI, I'm in my office. My dogs are home, and if you that was Luna just like doing an itch. So there she is again. So if you hear some weird sounds in the background, oh, now she hears me calling her name, so now I have to pet her. So if you hear weird sounds, moaning, rolling around in the background, that's my dog Luna. And Lily has planted herself firmly under my desk at my feet. That's her favorite spot. Nobody can get to her. They leave her alone. And plus, she likes being with her parents. So diagnosis is part of the overall process that's important to keep in mind when you are going through the assessment process with your clients. Oh my gosh, Luna is in rare form today. She's making me itch her ear. If I don't itch her ear, then she scratches on my leg and scratches the chair. so, um, so where was I? Diagnosis. That's right. So, and that diagnosis is one of the overall core competencies needed when you're talking about clinical skills in play therapy. And so the Association for Play Therapy is the organization that I adhere to their best practices. They're here in the United States, and they developed three categories for core competencies, and competency two area is clinical play therapy skills. And so within that category, they address the importance of using the assessment process and the skills that you need to develop when you are working with children and adolescents using play therapy. So if you're joining me live today, that's what I'm going to talk about. If you are joining me live today, I would love to see who's here. Go ahead and post your name in the comments. What population do you work with? Where do you work? Are you using play therapy currently? I'd love to see who's here and the work that you're doing in play therapy. I'm Kathy Spooner. I'm a licensed clinical social worker and registered play therapist here in the United States with over 30 years experience. And currently, one of the things that I do is train up play therapists to become competent using play therapy with children, adolescents, and therapists. And so I've been doing play therapy supervision for about 15 years now. Hey, Steph. Oh, hey, Steph. Mostly working with 17 and under. Awesome. So if you're watching, I'd love to see who's here. I go live every week on Instagram, LinkedIn, in my play therapy group, which is called Play and Expressive Arts Therapy Playground. If you're a child and adolescent therapist and you really want to learn how to use play therapy, or maybe you're already using play therapy with children, adolescents, and families, and you'd like a group of like-minded professionals, then feel free to pop over to my Facebook group. And you do have to answer all the questions or you won't be in the group. And that happens a lot. And I always feel bad. So that's why I make sure to say, make sure you answer every single question, and then you will be in the group. I also live stream onto LinkedIn and in my YouTube channel. And the YouTube channel is probably the easiest place to find all my replays. That is Kathy Spooner at Renewing Hearts Training. So hello from Facebook user working with child and youth mental health in British Columbia. Cool. Using play therapy in session. Oh, that's awesome. Always look forward to learning more. Well, I'm glad you're here. So feel free to ask questions, join in the conversation. Let's get started. So as I mentioned before, the Association for Play Therapy has a credential called Registered Play Therapist. That is their credential. And with that credential, there are certain requirements that have to be met, including play therapy specific training, being in consultation with a registered play therapist, of which I am, and also having direct contact. They've structured it. I like the way they've made the changes, honestly, as somebody who's been supervising for 15 years. Although I know it's a little kind of daunting for people getting started, it does give you a really good grounding in play therapy if you ever thought about pursuing your registered play therapy credential. If you're interested in that, you can hop over to the website for the Association for Play Therapy and look at their credentialing page. Their website is the number 4, P like play, T like therapy.org. So that's where I really like these competencies that they've come up with. I think as a supervisor, play therapy supervisor, it really helps me to know what skills I want to make sure to focus on in my play therapy academy. So I do have a supervision play therapy consultation program. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end, but part of that program is we meet twice a month and we do play therapy consultation groups online. And so in those groups, one of the things that I want to focus on is making sure that the professionals in the group really get a good grounding, and knowing these core competencies really helps to make sure to identify what competencies to focus on. And so for these clinical skills using assessment, I'm going to read what it says on the competency. It says, for play therapists need to develop skills to apply assessments that highlight various aspects of child and or systems and the play therapy process. And there are 5 skills they've identified in that assessment process that are really important. First and foremost is case conceptualization. And I've been talking a lot about that lately. And I'll talk a little bit more about the course that I have available, Getting Grounded in Play Therapy, Case Conceptualization. So if you're interested in learning more about that, if you're interested in learning more about my Play Therapy Academy, I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end as well. But case conceptualization is really gathering information that from your clients, from their parents, to get a better understanding of what exactly is going on with your client and why is it happening. And you want to do that within a cultural lens, if that's if that applies for your clients, you want to make sure to look at that and consider all the cultural aspects of what's going on with your clients, as well as identifying any resiliency factors. The most common type of assessment that for case conceptualization that we use is the biopsychosocial, cultural, spiritual assessment. So you're gathering all kinds of information, and then you use that. So gathering that information, knowing what questions to ask, how to ask them, follow-up questions. You have to keep diagnosis in mind as well. That's the second skill, is diagnosis, because diagnosis really helps you understand the cluster of symptoms and gaining a better idea of what exactly does this cluster of symptoms mean. And then that's going to influence your treatment plan. So the first competency skill to learn is case conceptualization. And um, that ties into the second skill, which is diagnosis. I can hear my dog Luna. Luna, she's digging in the background. Um, Now she's looking at me like, oh my gosh, why'd you call my name? Luna's very anxious. She's our anxious dog. She's very sensitive, and she's so smart too. So case conceptualization ties into diagnosis. And as child and adolescent therapists, you really have to have a good idea of diagnoses that pertain to children. So here in the United States, we use the DSM-5, which is now DSM-5 TR. And the DSM is not necessarily geared towards children, adolescents, most like not great with kids. It's mostly geared towards adults, which I think is part of the frustration in the play therapy arena that we have with the DSM. It has gotten better over the years. I first started when it was the DSM-3, I think it's DSM-3 TR. And then we went to 4. So you don't want to get rid of diagnosing, and you don't want to use it as your end all be all. It's a tool to use as you're doing your case conceptualization. You're keeping in mind diagnosis to better understand what's going on with your client, because you're going to use that information for your treatment planning. You're also keeping that in mind for as you're thinking about treatment models and what kind of interventions and how to get your client from the beginning to the end of treatment. You're kind of keeping all of that in mind as part of your case conceptualization, which will tie into your clinical decision making. And in my course, Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Case Conceptualization, I walk you through step by step all the questions to ask, how to ask them, why you want to ask them, and then step by step through a case formulation process that you're going to use for your treatment planning process. So those are really important skills to learn. And as a supervisor, play therapist, supervisor, consultant, these are things that we focus on in Play Therapy Academy in our case consultation groups. So Heidi said that, oh, Heidi, for Facebook, because I use a third-party platform for my Facebook group, LinkedIn, and YouTube. On Instagram won't let me do that, so I kind of have to go back and forth between screens. But you have to give it permission. All that means is you have to say yes, and it just lets me see your name. It's honestly, it's not that big of a deal. I'm going to go in my Facebook group though after this later today and kind of chit chat probably. And I think this is you, Heidi, asked, do you use the DC 0 to 5 for little people you work with? That's a great question. I'm not exactly sure what the DC 0 to 5 is. It sounds good though, and it sounds like something I want to learn more about. So that's a great question for sure. Um, yeah, especially if you're working with little ones, and especially little ones with the DSM, it gets a little more challenging. It's gotten better. DSM has gotten much better over the years, and I feel like they still have more work to do. Um, the other thing that you want to keep in mind, and this is the other skill that's important to develop, and I think this as child and adolescent therapists, we really, really need to keep this skill in mind, which is recognizing and understanding family dynamics. And so this is where I feel like the marriage and family therapists um, have a really good grounding with this. I feel really fortunate because back in the 1991, I got started my master's program for social work. I started in 1990. I graduated in 92. But in my program way back then, I my concentration year was in child and family welfare. So my whole concentration program, we got family systems. That's pretty much all we got, which I later had to make up for some of the areas where I didn't get some good grounding. But I am grateful for that grounding in understanding and recognizing family dynamics because I feel like working with children, we have really got to make sure we're conceptualizing this part of what's going on with clients because if we want children live within the context of their families, they do that generationally. And so, what I mean by children live in the context of their families generationally. What I mean is family patterns get passed down through the generations. So typically we have a combination of, helpful and not so helpful patterns. And then along the line, parents will kind of identify which patterns they want to make a change. That's not always the case though, because unless you recognize what's going on, you're not necessarily going to make the change. And those of you who work with higher acuity families, these are the families that have typically generational histories of trauma, attachment problems, addiction, typically poverty issues. These higher acuity families, I always feel like they're in survival mode generationally, and so they don't necessarily always um, recognize the patterns that are going on within the family system. And so it's important to really think about those dynamics. What are the family dynamics? What are family system patterns? What are attachment? In my Play Therapy Academy, we focus a lot on looking at attachment patterns. I am a huge attachment fan and neuroscience fan. So, really understanding that is important. Luna, stop digging. Oh my goodness. She is in rare form today, man. She normally doesn't, she's normally not this noisy. Anyways, so the other thing to keep in mind about family dynamics and when you're conceptualizing the treatment and what kinds of treatment, this is kind of you're assessing all of this. You also want to keep in mind that parents are the therapeutic agents of change. So figuring out how to involve parents, family members, or guardians if children aren't living with parents is a really important skill that is important to develop. Oh, Heidi, you have a dog named Luna too? Yes. I feel like that's a really popular dog name. Luna is really highly sensitive. Now she's heard me say her name a few times, so now she's going to be even extra anxious. Um, so when I say parents, guardians are the therapeutic agents of change, what I mean by that is children live within the context of family, generationally within those patterns. And so identifying those patterns is really important. And you want to make sure that you're supporting parents. If you're working with children, you're working with parents. If you're working with children, you're working with families. Whether or not they are in the room with the child, all of those dynamics, all of those relationship patterns, they're in the room with you. And so, in my mind, why not bring them in the room? Why not include parents in the play therapy process and not just those 5-minute check ins at the end of the session, which are never 5 minutes, or all of that contact in between sessions. In Play Therapy Academy, I talk a lot about a much more effective way to manage that and to integrate parents. If you go back and watch some of my previous replays, which are probably easiest done over on my YouTube channel, Kathy Spooner, Renewing Hearts Training, you'll probably find those in there. Talk about those in there. Some more effective ways that are going to be more time efficient, more effective, more, I would say, ethical, because you really have to be careful about emails and texting. If you engage parents in the change process, they have the ability to facilitate change within the system. You meet with that child 45, 60 minutes a week. That child is in with their parents, with their family, all the other hours of the week. And so why not include them in the change process? And in your assessment, part of what you're doing with that case conceptualization is figuring out what's going to be the most effective way to do that, to involve parents so that you get some really significant long-term system shifts for the child. That child is going to be with their family the rest of their lives. That's the hope. That's always the goal when possible. They're going to be with you as the play therapist for a short period of time. That's what I always say. I am in their lives a very, very brief time. I always try to be a really positive influence and have positive impact for the brief time that I've involved. And the reality is, I'm only in their lives a brief time. And so my job is to help the system make the necessary changes to support the growth and development of the child. And so family dynamics is a really important part of that process. The next skill that competency that's important to think about is treatment suitability and effectiveness. And so in my getting grounded in play therapy case conceptualization course that I have, there's a whole section in there on bias and clinical decision making. And bias is really important. There's all kinds of bias. Um, and it's really important that we look at these biases that we have, because one of the biases is over investing and thinking a one size fits all for children is going to be the way to go. And so maybe you've spent a lot of time and money and effort on one specific type of treatment model, and maybe that's not the most effective for your specific client. So it's really important to think about suitability and effectiveness when you're conceptualizing and assessing what's going on with your clients. And the other part is, how are you going to integrate parents to get their full engagement? What type of model is going to be effective for including parents and their um, and their children? I use an attachment-based family play therapy model. In fact, I wrote a whole book on my model, working with traumatized children and adolescents. And in this model, I kind of spell out all the stages, what has to happen in each of the stages. So that when I'm conceptualizing what needs to happen, part of what I'm assessing is, most likely I'm going to use that a family that attachment-based family play therapy model more because it's really flexible. I can use it with just kids and their parents, and I can also get the whole family in there. And I'm usually getting the whole family in there, at least for a brief period of time. But that's part of the assessment process. And if you're interested in the book, I will actually post that in the comments. You can also find it at my website. It's on the homepage. It's called Attachment Focused Family Play Therapy and Intervention for Children and Adolescents After Trauma. You can use, I use the model with all types of issues going on, not just trauma, but it works really well with trauma. So treatment suitability and effectiveness. And then the final skill to keep in mind, and I think we often forget this skill in play therapy, and that is termination. Termination, the way and how this fits in with assessment is when I'm conceptualizing treatment, clients are coming, I'm doing the assessment process at the very beginning, then I'm also conceptualizing what needs to happen from the beginning to the end. How do I need to help my client get all the way through the treatment process? So in the beginning, this is just like we're kind of formulating a hypothesis, so to speak, about what that's going to take. And then we know assessment happens all the way through the treatment process from beginning to end. We're keeping our case conceptualization in mind. Then we're using our clinical decision-making skills to figure out from session to session to session how to get them all the way through from start to finish. And we're navigating any barriers that come up along the way. And that's another thing that I talk about in my case conceptualization course. And we talk about that in Play Therapy Academy. You want to keep in mind what needs to happen to get them to successfully complete the play therapy process whenever possible. The other thing that comes in mind when you're thinking about termination is going to bring up grief and loss issues. It's going to bring up some anxiety for parents because you've built that rapport with them. You've helped them make changes that have gotten the results that they want for their child and their family. And so now they're going to have to go without you. You're their scaffolding, so to speak. So termination is a process helping them shift, for helping parents shift to taking over more of that role and feeling confident in their role, helping children be able to use their parents for support, helping children use their skills or whatever it is that they're dealing with, having them successfully figure out strategies and ways of managing that in order to develop resiliency and thrive and feel competent and capable. Hey, somebody in Facebook group said, hey, Kathy, I'm going to go in my Facebook group and say hi later. So those are the 5 things to keep in mind. Case conceptualization skills, diagnostic skills, diagnosis is a tool. It's not the end all be all, and it is an important part of the process. Family dynamics, treatment suitability and effectiveness, and termination. And so that's just a quick recap of the skills, to like the things that you want to make sure to think about. Becoming a highly competent play therapist means it's really important to master these 5 skills: case conceptualization, diagnosis, family dynamics, treatment suitability and effectiveness, and then termination. Because keeping these in mind with your case conceptualization is going to help you develop a treatment plan that's going to be more effective and help get your client successfully through the play therapy process to termination. And diagnosis oftentimes does have that negative connotation with it, but it's really important to have a good idea of what's going on with your clients, because if you don't really identify what exactly is the problem and why is it happening, then you could actually miss what is going on with your client and slow down the treatment process or not get great treatment outcomes. And then finally, conceptualizing treatment means you need to consider a variety of factors, including family dynamics, what's going on, why the problem is happening, how are you going to help your client get all the way through those stages of change, and understanding that termination, it will bring up grief and loss that you may have to work through again. And it is a process to get there. So that is it for today. I'm so excited to have some of you on the program today. It was nice meeting some of my play therapy Facebook group people. I'm going to go in there and say hi later. If you are interested in Play Therapy Academy is my online program to help child and adolescent therapists who want to use play therapy, and maybe you're feeling overwhelmed, confused, maybe you have some serious imposter syndrome going. These are all normal and natural as part of your learning process, which to me is why it's really important to get into a program that's going to support your learning and your development with all of these core competencies, so you can feel confident, and after all, you really get into the profession because you want to make a difference. So feeling confident and capable is going to help you feel like you are accomplishing that goal that you have, and you don't have to do it alone. We have a group of people that can most definitely help you and support you. The nice thing about the group is it's not just my 30 years experience working with children and adolescents, but it's also the combined wisdom of the group and the other professionals in the group, which is really, really nice. And then inside Play Therapy Academy, I also have the Getting Grounded in Play Therapy Excellence courses. So Play Therapy Foundations, Play Therapy Case Conceptualization. Coming up soon is Play Therapy Treatment Planning. Then after that will be Play Therapy, writing Play Therapy Notes, another one on working with parents. So all of those online courses will be in Play Therapy Academy. So if you're interested in Play Therapy Academy, I will post a link in the comments below later today where you can go over there and check it out. Also, if you're interested in the courses, but you don't need Play Therapy Academy, you can buy them separately. So those are available if you go on my website. Oops, that's the wrong website. I just updated my website. So my website is rhplaytherapytraining.com. So again, that's RH like renewing hearts, rhplaytherapytraining.com. You can, if you go to the supervision page, that's where you'll find Play Therapy Academy information. If you go on the courses page, you can see all the courses I have available. Also on the homepage, if you're interested in my book, Attachment Focused Family Play Therapy, an intervention for children and adolescents after trauma, that's on there. That whole attachment-based family play therapy model that I've developed is, I talk about that in the book. So I will see you next week. So bye for now.